Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. Each week, we share practical spiritual insights designed to support your growth, helping you live with more clarity, compassion, and intention. Wherever you're listening from, we're glad you're here. Let's begin.
And it's my absolute pleasure to introduce, I think it's Reverend Doctor, or is it Dr. Reverend? I can never keep that straight. Ron Fox, who's been a motivational speaker and a workshop facilitator for over 25 years. Ron is an ordained minister with Centers for Spiritual Living. He is a gifted speaker, a published author. His inspirational style, coupled with a keen sense of humor, make him a favorite with audiences everywhere he has spoken. In 2018, the Centers for Spiritual Living honored him by designating him a Doctor of Divinity. And in 2019, he was awarded the Meritorious Minister Award for his outstanding service. In 2024, he was honored with the title of Emeritus Minister. He resides in Port St. John, Florida, with his wife, Becky, who is an artist and a graphic designer, as well as a CSL practitioner emeritus. Please join me in welcoming.
Good morning. It's really not.
I can't hear you.
I just whispered to her when you were reading that. I said, Becky, we need to shorten that because I speak at a lot of different churches and I feel every week like I'm at my own memorial service. So I want to tell you something that I just realized as we were sitting here. So our center closed in 2 years ago, I think it was. And so I speak almost every week at a different church. And a lot of them are unity churches. And I was speaking at a unity church a couple of months ago, and I quoted Ernest Holmes. And after the service, the director of operations came up to me and he said, "You quoted Ernest Holmes today. This is a unity church. Know your audience." So I'm only mentioning that because I want to begin today. I'm going to be speaking on living a spiritual life, and I want to begin today with a quote from one of my favorite unity ministers, Eric Butterworth. And Butterworth said that the Alpha and Omega of Jesus' teaching was about the divinity of man. And so what he was telling us is, in his opinion, all of Jesus' teachings, from the beginning Alpha to the end Omega, was to teach us not only about our humanness, but also about the divinity that resides within us. So I want to tell you a fable, at least I think it's a fable. There's a fable that Socrates was sitting on the side of the road one day, and somebody came to him that didn't know him, didn't know who he was, and he said, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to get to Mount Olympus?" And Socrates said, "Yes, I can. Make every step you take be in that direction." The way for you and I to achieve our personal Mount Olympus is to make a radical, permanent change in our consciousness. A radical, permanent change. Meaning, we need to be ready to do the work to get our consciousness to, however you want to put it, the highest or the deepest it can be. And let me give you a quote from Butterworth. He wrote, "Our humanity is but the degree to which we have given expression to our divinity. We are human in expression, but divine in creation and limitless in potentiality." So he's telling us in a different way that because we're human, but we're also connected to the divine, that our potential is unlimited because Spirit's potential is unlimited. So if we're willing to put some work in, We can be whatever we wish to be and do whatever we wish to do. So Barbara DeAngelis is one of my favorite writers. I like what she writes because it's simple. I can understand it. And she's written a number of books. And in one of her books, she tells the story of being on an airplane and sitting behind somebody who had the window seat. And this person had the blind pulled all the way down to about 4 inches from the bottom, about like that. So when he wanted to look out the window, this is how he had to do it. And so she looked at him. When she saw him do it the first time, she thought to herself, well, he's just going to do it. You know, he might want to take a quick peek. But he stayed there. And she said, in fact, the flight attendant went up to him and said, "Sir, would you like me to raise?" He said, No, I'm fine. So again, he's sitting like that. And she's sitting there getting more uncomfortable watching him. And then she starts to wonder why she is so uncomfortable watching him. And then she gets what it is. She understands why she felt so uncomfortable watching him. She said, because I realized so many of us live our lives like that. We live our lives out of a small sliver of our consciousness, and then we wonder why we're confused, because we forget that we can raise that shade anytime we make the choice to. But instead, some of us condemn ourselves to being hunched over and uncomfortable in life, in relationships, and pretty much in anything that we do. So Becky and I actually multiplied this out the other day. Becky and I have been in Science of Mind for 36 years. So obviously we're invested and we believe in it. But what helps me reaffirm the beliefs and the teaching here is when I read something about people in an entirely different culture living way over on the other side of the world are teaching exactly what we teach. And so I want to give you a couple of examples from Eastern people. And the first one is from the former late head of the Western Sufis. And he must have read something where somebody said that the world is our prison, because he said the world isn't our prison. Our prison is our way of thinking. Sound familiar? Our prison is our way of thinking. And he said the drama of life, things like earning a living, illness, relationships, he said, those aren't blocks to elimination, to illumination. He said, they're the road to finding it. They're not difficult. They're not stopping us. He said, what they are creative catalysts for spiritual evolution. Creative catalysts for spiritual evolution. So he's telling us that our day-to-day life, the everyday things that we're involved in, those are the things, if we do them in a spiritual sense, that's going to get us to our highest place in consciousness. In fact, he said, the real test is how you handle everyday problems. So the second person I want to tell you about, I'm sure everybody here has heard of the Beatles, right? And now it's not them that I'm going to talk about, but if you might remember at some point in their career, they kind of moved to India for a while. Do you remember that? And they went to India to study with the Maharishi. And the Maharishi is the person who created transcendental meditation. And he said something really interesting that a New Yorker like me really likes. He said, you can sit here isolated from the world and gain enlightenment. You could do that, he said, but the true test of enlightenment is, can you experience it in Times Square? Think about that. So he's saying, it's easy to sit in your closet and meditate all day, and you might become enlightened, but the real test of enlightenment is, how do you treat your neighbors, the people you work with, the lady that's the cashier in Publix, your spouse, your kids? That's what he's saying is the real test of enlightenment. So I'm going to guess that most of us have had thoughts in our life like, my life's not going right. I don't want to keep going on like this. I want my life to have more meaning and more purpose. Well, there's a name for that. It's called divine discontent. And what it is, it's when we're ready to turn over and do some real spiritual work. It's a time when we're ready to release what's not working and become who we're meant to be. Each of us has a mission to complete here. And I know when I've taught classes and told people that, a lot of people say, not me, me, little old me, I have a mission. Well, the truth is that some people have really big missions and some have smaller ones. We're not all going to be president of the United States. We're not all going to be movie idols or great sports heroes. But the truth is, the world needs great plumbers. The world needs great electricians. The world needs great teachers. The world needs great parents. And that can be our mission. And it's unique to each one of us. So if you don't bring forth those gifts, if you don't live that mission, it's lost to the world forever. And I always like to tell people, as close as I am with Becky, I can't live her mission. Now, on the other hand, she's sure she can live mine, but that'll be a whole different talk. The late Rabbi Shani Labowitz once said, God dreamed a dream in you. Doesn't that sound really neat? God dreamed a dream in you. And you know that you're living that dream when what you do feels good. Not only that, but it serves the goodness of others. And she said, it's our destiny to live out that dream, and it doesn't depend on anything outside us. It simply means for us to live in integrity and to become the person that we're meant to be. Living a spiritual life, you need to have meaning and purpose in it. And it's where the finite meets the infinite, or the infinite meets the finite. And so let me give you a story, an example of what I'm speaking about. Rachel Remen is a doctor, a medical doctor, and she has a place in Northern California where she does counseling with people that are ill, very ill. And this one day she was approached by a resident in psychiatry who asked her if he could sit in on one of her sessions. And she said, yes. And this is the session that he sat in on. The session consisted of a young man who was all tattooed up, who looked like a gangbanger, who was a former gangbanger. It was him and his 19-year-old girlfriend who had stage 4 cancer and only a very short time to live. And it was this young man telling Rachel what this woman had done to him, how she had totally transformed his life. that she brought things out from him that he never knew was in there. The love that he felt, the kindness, the caring, the compassion. He said, I never experienced any of that until I met her. And at some point, Rachel looked beyond the two of them to the young psychiatrist student, and he had put down his pad, put down his pencil, and he was just sitting there with tears running down his face. After the session was over, Rachel went to him and she said, tell me, did you learn anything today? And he said, yeah, I did. And she said, tell me, what'd you learn? And he said, I learned we're all more than we think. We're all more than we think. And it reminded me of one of my all-time favorite quotes that I better not forget now, right? It's in the eyes of the world, I am average, but in my own heart, I am of great moment. The challenge I face is how to actualize, how to concretize the quiet eminence of my own being. So that was Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he was saying the same thing this young fellow did. We might look one way to the world, but we all know that we do have that unique gift, that unique mission, and we can feel it and look for ways to bring it to life. Michael Singer wrote a book called The Untethered Soul. And in the book, he asks the question, or he just discusses how difficult it is to really know about God, because there's so many teachings, there's so many concepts, there's so many views. He said, but fortunately for us, we have a direct connection, a direct internal connection to spirit, and we can choose to identify with that. And he said, how do you know you're identifying with it? You know because you walk around loving. Walk around loving for no reason at all. So when I read that, I thought of this, and yesterday I decided to look it up. There are 8.2 billion of us on the planet now, okay? Just imagine if 8.2 people walked around just loving for no reason at all. Think about what our lives would be like. No more war, no more poverty, no more hunger, no more abuse of any kind. We'd have created the world that we say we want to create, a world that works for everyone. So one of my favorite authors is somebody named Wayne Muller. He's a minister, a speaker, great writer. And one of his books that he wrote was called Sabbath Time. And he defined Sabbath time as a time to listen to that still small voice, where we celebrate what's beautiful and sacred. And there are lots of ways that we can celebrate what's beautiful and what's sacred. You know, we can light candles, we can sing songs, we can tell stories, we could go out to eat with really good friends, we can make love, we can take a walk in nature, we can meditate, or we could just be still. And I'll just share with you one of my favorite ways. Becky and I live in Port St. John, and we live dangerously close to the Indian River. It's never come up to our house, but we live pretty close. And when I can, when the weather's nice, I like to do my research and write my messages in our screened-in porch in the back, because I sit there and I look at all this beautiful water, and sometimes I see dolphins, and sometimes I see manatees, and sometimes I see sailboats. And it just takes me to a place of such deep peace and such connection with spirit. And any one of us could find what does that for us, what makes it work. So I want to ask you a question. What do you call what you do with your days and your weeks and your months and your years? You know what you call that? It's called a life, It's called a life. And most of life is made up of pretty ordinary moments. But we also have what I like to call firecracker moments. And what I mean by firecracker moments are the special times, maybe when you graduate school, your first love, you get a promotion at your job, you get married, whatever. They're big moments, but your life's not made up of those moments. They come and they go. So I want to do something now that I know is going to embarrass my wife, but it's okay. This is my phone. It's an iPhone. It's closed now. But in that phone, like everybody's phone, I have pictures. And one of the sets of pictures that I have is of our wedding. And every single day, I go to that place, and there's probably a dozen pictures, and I hit on one or I hit on two, and I just look at them for a few seconds. And I do it because I want to be reminded of how much I loved her the day we were getting married. How I could not believe that somebody that wonderful, that beautiful, inside and out, was going to agree to spend the rest of her life with me. But I don't want to denigrate it, but that's a firecracker moment, and it's 35 years ago. So it really doesn't affect us spiritually unless I bring it in to the day, which is the purpose I do that. And what I mean is, if Becky comes to me and says, hey, I just did a load of wash, will you help me fold and put away? Or will you take out the garbage? Or make the salad tonight? Those are the moments that make the relationship spiritual. And I'm not telling you this to brag about our relationship. I'm telling you to show anybody can have. Those are the Times Square moments that the Maharishi talked about. And we don't, it doesn't have to be with a spouse or only with a spouse. It could be all the people, in your life. When we say what we put our attention on is what we become. And so if we put our attention on loving, on caring, on kindness, then that's when we're out and we're living a spiritual life. So I want to close with a fable. And it's a fable about a lady named Myra. And Myra lived a long time ago in a village that was surrounded by mountains and trees. And she was a really nice, caring person. People in her community really liked her and really cared for her. And like a lot of us, she was taught that God is in the sky, God is in the temple, God is in the words of learned people. And so she studied, she read, she prayed, she went to services, but always there was something that she felt was missing, a sense of some kind of separation. And one day something happened that changed her whole life. Somebody that she loved a great deal died. They made their transition, as we would put it. And so she went out into the forest because she was crushed. And she sat by a tree and she just sobbed. And then she called up to God and she said, "Where are you? Why are you so elusive? Why is it so hard for me to find you?" And then she just sat, and she sat in silence. And after a while, she felt something. It was like a warmth. It was a presence. It was peace, and it was God. Not above her, not around her, but as her. And when she went back to her community, people could see that she was different. There was something, they loved her before, but there was something more lovable and attractive to her. And she would be silent a lot, and people would say, "What is it? Tell us, tell us." And she'd say, "There's a fire within me, and I just sit by it." This story is not just about Myra. This story is about all of us, about you and me, because there's a sacred flame within you right now, and you don't have to earn it. It's not dependent on your circumstances. It's not buried beneath any guilt or shame you might be feeling. It's your divine essence, the spark of God. That's your true nature. And you don't have to go to the forest to find it. You simply have to become still, to listen, and to trust that the presence of God is not something that you visit, it's something that we are. And so I invite you today and every day to sit by that inner fire, to breathe with it, to walk with it, and to live from it. Because that flame within you is the light of the world, and it never goes out. God bless you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for spending this time with us on Spiritual Wisdom Weekly from the Greater Orlando Center for Spiritual Living. If this episode supported you in any way, we invite you to stay connected. Listen again, share it with someone you care about, or simply carry what resonated with you into your week. Until next time, take good care and keep growing in spirit.